Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review comes from Iran in 2022, and it's Holy Spider, directed by Abi Abbas, or Ali Abbasi even, who directed the wonderful Border, and I didn't realise he's actually directed the young Donald Trump film, which I probably won't see. This was almost my film of the year, but not quite. So Pharaoh still has that title so far in 2025. The Holy Spider is kind of wonderful, but fascinating. Abbasi now lives, he's got Danish citizenship, so he doesn't actually live in Iran anymore. Probably just as well, because not surprisingly he got into trouble with this film. This is a film actually based on a true story of a serial killer who killed at least 16 women who are all sex workers in the holy city of Mashhad between 2000 and 2001. Now, when the film came out, obviously the Iranian authorities were not too chuffed with the film. They said it was a politically motivated insult to Islamic beliefs, compared it to the Satanic Verses, Salman Rushdie. So not the best review you're ever going to get. The actress Zara Mir Ibrahimi won the Best Actress at Cannes, and she said she got at least 200 threats after she won that. So again, that religion of peace really doing great work. So even though it's set in Iran and it is about a man who kills sex workers because he believes he's cleansing the streets of these terrible women, you know, it's not specific to, you know, the Muslim faith, even though it obviously features the Muslim faith, because throughout history there's always been people who kill people in the name of whatever god they believe in. So it's universal in that regard. But obviously, well, a lot of the people who threatened Ibrahimi never actually saw the film, as so many of these things happen when people get outraged with films. I remember Crash, and obviously that didn't go down well, but it was criticised and said to be banned, and people hadn't actually seen the film. So there's always been a lot of that, people wanting films banned, and the people who make films get into trouble even though they've never seen the film. But this has a lot of excellent points, obviously, about faith and what you're going to do in the name of faith. Because as is shown in the film, there's a certain amount of the population that are actually on the killer's side, and again think he is doing the work of Allah and cleaning the streets of these terrible women. Now obviously prostitution wouldn't exist if it wasn't for men, and prostitution wouldn't exist if it wasn't for, you know, poverty and having, you know, generally speaking, you know, poverty and drug addiction and needing to make money to survive. I mean, if we all lived in a society where, you know, governments actually did their job properly, things like prostitution and drug addiction wouldn't be as prevalent as it is. But certainly being a prostitute in Iran, or I'm guessing many Muslim countries, probably isn't the best profession to be in. Punishments range from fines to jail, to possible execution for multiple offenders. Not sure what happens to the men if they're caught, or the men who pimp women. You can put your answers in the postcard, what you think happens to them. But this is a wonderful film. We start with following a woman who puts her daughter to bed, and then goes out on the street and is picked up by a man, and we see her being killed and then dumped in the countryside, and then the title comes up, Holy Spider. This is a man who phones the local newspaper, tells them all about it, where the bodies are. You know, he's not interested in hiding bodies. It's one of those serial killer films where we do meet the killer early on. There's no, you know, huge mystery of tracking down the killer. It follows the kind of manhunter approach of, you know, meeting the killer. And because it's set in the kind of society it's set in, you don't actually feel as much anger towards the serial killer as you do to certain people in power, like the senior police officers, or the local political figures. You don't actually feel as bad for the serial killer. And then we're introduced to this female journalist who has come to report on the case, because when we join the film, the woman that we saw being killed in the pre-credit sequence is the 9th, so it's been going on for a little while. But again, in a wonderful introduction to the society, and again, whether it's like this or not, I haven't been to Iran and I don't plan on going to Iran anytime soon, but she's reserved a hotel room by herself, and of course when she comes in, because she's a woman, the people behind the desk are like, oh no, we've had a glitch in the system and you can't get a room now, we're fully booked. And it's only when she produces her ID as being a reporter, they say, oh, the problem's fixed, you can have a room now. Yeah, because again, she's a woman on her own, she's unmarried, booking a single room. I mean, geez, oh. So that's the introduction. Then she's introduced to the reporter, who'll kind of become the sidekick, even though he's not very good either. I mean, there's rumours about her having an affair with her old editor, but obviously she has a slightly different view of the events. But of course, it's pretty much believed that, you know, the characters aren't on her side, put it that way. And it's stuff like that that you feel more angry about than the actual serial killer. Because again, the serial killer is not portrayed as a monster. He's a family man. He's got a son and a daughter, and a wife. So he's not portrayed as this madman. He was in the war. He does have survivor's guilt. You know, he has this kind of martyr complex. You know, why couldn't he be a martyr and die in the war? His kind of older friend's a bit more philosophical about it. So he has kind of survivor's guilt, and then he's found this way of helping society in God's name by clearing the streets of these sick women, corrupt women, as he calls them. I mean, I'm going to go into a spoiler section at some point, but I'll let people know when I'm going to talk spoilers, because I think it's a really good film and it deserves to talk more about it. But also, I don't want to give anything away. But again, it's based on a true story. The female journalist is fictional for the purposes of the film, so I'm not sure what happened in reality. The guy's name's Saeed Hinai. I probably pronounced that wrong. So he killed at least 16 people, 16 women. It is a wonderful film, but again, it's universal. So obviously Iran wasn't happy about what happened, but again, it happened in real life, so it's not as if they made it up. Obviously they dramatise some elements, like the female journalist who never existed. Yeah, she was probably banned from having a job. It's a beautiful film. It starts off in kind of night time, and then we do see daylight scenes. But again, personally, you know, the police, the guy who's in charge of the investigation, you'll be annoyed at him, you know, because he belittles the journalist, because as she says, you know, there's 9 victims so far, you know, you've got no leads, you know, no physical evidence, you've got absolutely nothing. And he's like, oh, you're going to tell me how to do my job? And it's like, and then he also does the typical male thing later in the film as well. So it's not just the serial killer you might be annoyed at, you'll be annoyed at quite a few people in the film, and the frustrations of that. Again, this is not an attack on Islam. I would like to see every religion abolished, but sadly that's never going to happen. Yeah, so it's specific to true events in Iran, but it is universal as far as, you know, throughout history, sex workers have been targets for serial killers, and because again, society doesn't care about them for the most part. Granted, being a serial killer nowadays is obviously harder with GPS, and you can track people on their phones and CCTV. You know, the golden age of serial killers is probably over, unless you go to more and more remote places where they don't have technology. But it's really difficult to be a serial killer nowadays. It was a lot easier in the 70s and 80s, and even in the early 2000s, depending on what country in the world you are. So I would highly recommend it, even though it is a film from 2022. I don't think I even said that. It's a film from 2022, can you believe it? It's actually excellent. But I'm going to go into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen the film, go away and watch it. It's on Mubi, it'll be on streaming. I'm not sure, did this get a Criterion? I'm not actually sure. There's a Q&A with director Ali Abbasi and Anna Lily Amirpour. So if that name's familiar, she directed A Girl Walks Alone at Night, and apparently she's written the script for the Cliffhanger reboot, which seems a bit bizarre. But I'll be honest, she is actually quite annoying in the interview. She's chewing gum and she constantly interrupts Ali Abbasi to get her point across. It's a kind of found the interview a little bit frustrating. Who chews gum while you're interviewing somebody? I mean, but it's certainly interesting to hear his perspective, even though he's interrupted quite a lot. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. So if you don't want to know spoilers, thanks for watching, and hope you'll join me again for more random reviews. If you have seen the film, please join me for a spoiler-filled discussion. So eventually, the journalist is so frustrated by the police's lack of investigation and lack of results, and the political figures, so she's pretty much claiming or thinking it's going to be, it's going to be swept under the carpet. They're going to let him just kill for as long as he wants, because again, some people support him and what he's doing. But she gets so frustrated that she poses. She does the classic thing of posing as a prostitute in the streets. He has been spotted on his little motorbike, and he tends to go around on a Thursday night looking for women to kill. Obviously we do see him killing women in his fairly haphazard and brutal way. So she picks him up, and she's followed by her reporter friend, and she eventually escapes. He's arrested, but then the film goes into more interesting territory, because it's like, is he going to get off with it by using the God made me do it, or not necessarily God made me do it, but I'm doing God's work. They try and put in an insanity plea, but when he's supposed to say, oh yes, I'm crazy, he says, yes, I'm crazy for God. I'm not gonna let my followers know that I'm crazy. I did this for legitimate reasons. It's society thinking that these women are normal and the behaviour is normal. So he does get found guilty eventually. It's funny, he's sentenced to death, but he's also sentenced to like 14 years in prison and 100 lashes. I don't know whether he was to serve 14 years in prison after he was executed. But then he's visited in prison by his old friend and an important ally, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. On the day you're going to be executed, you'll be uncuffed and a back door will open and there'll be a van waiting for you and you can get out of here. All this time there's kind of protests outside to say he's innocent and let him go, and he's doing good work. The son becomes kind of more important, and there's a wonderful scene when he's with his mother saying, look at all the support, and they all love him and they all think he's innocent, and she's like, yeah, but in a couple of days they'll just go back to their normal lives and he'll be forgotten about and we'll have to go on with our lives. And then when he's about to go down the stairs to be executed, the female reporter pretty much says, has he had his 100 lashes? And then there's like a mix up because he hasn't had his 100 lashes, so they go and give him his 100 lashes, which is the old comedy routine of him being in a room and the person who's supposed to give him lashes just lashing the wall and him shouting out, oh, ow, that really hurts. So it almost becomes a little comedy moment, and in your mind you're thinking, are they just going to let him go so he can continue to do his work? Because there's a wonderful scene where they're doing an interview with him in the prison, and he says, you know, I don't want to be executed because I've still got more work to do in this city and around the country, as if he's going to go on tour with his prostitute killing circus. So he goes down to be executed, and of course he's expecting for a back door to open, which it does, and we as an audience, we're going, are they really going to let him off with this? Are they just going to let him escape? Because it becomes obviously political, and there's pressure from Tehran to do the right thing, but again, depending on your viewpoint, what is the right thing? Well, this is spoilers, so he does get executed, but even then the film's not necessarily over, because probably the most disturbing thing in the film are the last few moments when the journalist is on the bus on her way home, and she puts on her headphones and takes out her video camera, because interviewed the mother and interviewed the son, but we didn't see the son's interview until now, and he's saying that I mean, the son's probably under 15, I would say, and he says, you know, he's had 10 or 20 people say to him, oh, are you going to continue your father's work? And he's like, oh, you'll have to wait and see. And then he goes into this reconstruction of how his dad did it, you know, how he did it with the, well, he didn't do it with the prostitutes, how he killed the prostitutes, and then he calls through his little sister to be a prostitute and lie on the floor so he can show them how he strangled them. And it's like, yeah, that's probably the most disturbing thing in the film, is the fact that the son is using his sister as like a prop to show this journalist how his dad killed prostitutes. Yeah, it's a brilliant little moment to leave the audience on. You know, of course, if you're a devout Muslim, you might be upset about the film, but are you upset about the film, or are you upset about the fact that the guy was actually executed for it? Because as we see in the film, there's plenty of people that supported what he was doing. I'm assuming, obviously I don't know this, but I'm assuming there probably was some in the population that supported what he was doing in real life. Yeah, it's a wonderful film because it does what films are supposed to do. It makes you think, you know, about women in society, not just Iranian women in society, about how we treat sex workers, how they're looked at differently, even though everybody's got their own story. You know, the first one that we see killed, you know, is a single mother trying to support her daughter, but then there's other families that are interviewed, and even the mother of a prostitute that was killed is like, I'm glad she's dead, you know, because she was shameful. And yeah, but the father, or the prostitute's father, he was disabled, so he can't provide, so she was pretty much providing for the family. Yeah, and how sex workers have been preyed on for decades, probably centuries, and we kind of need to stop it. You know, obviously there was accusations the film's misogynistic. It's like, well, again, it happened in real life, and as we know, prostitutes unfortunately are targeted by violent killers throughout history, and we need to stop violence against sex workers, we need to stop violence against women, but we need to stop violence against men, children and animals and minerals as well. Yeah, it's still relevant, sadly, and again, it's also relevant as far as how far some people go for the religion. And again, that's just not talking about Islam, that's talking about all religions. Obviously nowadays the focus is on Islam as far as people going too far. But again, throughout history, people of just a bit of your religion have went too far, and that's why all religions must be abolished. And if I come into power, that's exactly what's going to happen. So thanks very much for watching this almost film of the year, Holy Spider. Please let me know if you've seen the young Donald Trump film directed by the same director and what you thought of it, because I probably won't be watching it. But he's certainly somebody to keep an eye on, because I did really enjoy Border as well. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen Holy Spider and what you think of it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.